Hi again. In our second tutorial, we're going to look at a completed version of our drag and drop interaction, and then we will create our own one from scratch. So in the previous tutorial, we looked at the setup of a drag and drop interaction, and now we will look at the complete version again, but this time in action, so that we know what we're aiming for with our final project. So to view your completed project, which we will do a little later on again yourselves, you need to choose the preview button and project, and then we will test and check that the learner is directed to the correct screens based on their performance. So in this example, we would require them to drag items onto the correct drag targets and then submit the answer, and if they've done well, they'll be directed to the success screen and they can exit the interaction, so that works correctly. And lastly, we will check what happens if they do something wrong in the interaction. So in other words, they make a mistake and then submit their answers, and they should be directed to the failure screen saying, sorry, you didn't succeed. And hitting the continue button will of course take them to the interaction screen where they can try it again. So the completed version is working very nicely. I'm now ready to demonstrate to you how to create it from scratch now that you know what we're looking for in its final form. So I'm going to exit out of the preview and navigate to my drag and drop 01 file, which is now the unscripted version of this interaction. So let me zoom out for a sec and show you that everything is in place, but nothing has been set up or scripted. So as in the final version, I have 3 screens just with items on them. So I have my 3 visuals, I have scripted nothing, but I have named some things already. So to name an item on the stage, I would click on it and type in the name in the properties panel. So let me just do that for my frog. So I'm going to call it frog. Press enter. And the same thing applies to my drag targets. These are the drag sources. The drag targets are below. I will also click on them and name them in my properties box. The last one remaining is my amphibian box. So I'll type in amphib box, and that's going to allow me to reference these items in the drag and drop interaction in a few minutes' time. Next up, on the final screens that appear should they make mistakes or get the answers correct, I would need to script the buttons. So if they get it right, I would like them to, on success, exit the whole interaction, and if they get the interaction wrong, so they make mistakes in the drag and drop, the continue button would take them back to the first screen. Now, in order to allow them to continue, they would choose, I'd have to script it to jump to a slide, and at the moment my slides aren't named, so that isn't really ideal. So what I will do is just come back to my slides, click on my slide, number 1, and just call it interaction or start or something like that. My second slide, which is where they would go to on success, so if they performed well and got all the answers right, they would go to the success screen. And the screen where they would end up if they made a mistake would be the third screen, meaning the failure screen, which I'm just going to name as well quickly. Okay, so my screen names are set up, which now means if I was to direct anybody via a button to any other screen, I would choose jump to slide on my failure screen and loop them back to the first slide where they could attempt the interaction again. So I'm happy with that now. Slides are named and the items on the stage are named as well. So my drag source items, these are the items that will be dragged ultimately onto my target or drag target items below, which are also named. Right, anything else that needs to be set up would be set up as just plain straightforward text captions and all that. So those would be set up just around the main objects. But I'm now ready to set up the actual drag and drop interaction. In order to do that, I would go to my interactions pop-down menu, which is at the top of your screen, sort of in the center, and I would choose drag and drop, and it opens up what is called the DragnDrop Wizard. Now the DragnDrop Wizard explains to you step by step what to do. So if you do forget or don't have this tutorial handy, next time you try to do a drag and drop interaction, just take the time to read that you will be completing one of 3 steps. And the first step is to identify which of the items would be your drag sources. So I would click on each of my drag source items and say these are the items that will be dragged, and then I hit the next button. Notice that they are highlighted in green. Step number 2 is to specify the drop targets on the slide. So now I'd say these items below, notice that they become selected in blue, become my drop targets. So I then hit the next button one more time, and then it'll ask me to now map them to one another, which I can do right now, and I would click and drag from the center of one of the drag sources, like the frog image for example, onto the amphibian drop target. The dragonfly is an insect, so I'll drag that onto the insects box, and the spiders and arachnids, I drag that onto the arachnids box. I'm now ready to finish, so I hit the finish button, and can you see now that I have a drag and drop set up to the right of my properties panel, which explains that there's now a drag and drop interaction available on this stage. Now that we've set up the drag and drop interaction, all that remains is to test that it works. So we'd go to the preview button and choose project. It will then generate the slides, and we'd then move our mouse over the objects. Notice that they have grabber hands. So now I will click on each of the items and check that I can drag them onto the correct sliders, onto the correct positions. And I'm happy with that. Now, before I test the submit button and where everything goes to, I'm just going to exit and go back to my actual interaction and check that I have the buttons scripted correctly. So on my second slide, where I've named the screen called success, I will click on the exit button, go to properties, and just do one last check that I have scripted it to exit properly should the correct answers be made. And the same thing on my failure screen. If they make a mistake, they would be directed to the interaction screen where they can attempt that interaction once more. So all that remains now is to set up, I'll just double check that the answers are set up correctly. And I would click on any one of the drag sources, go to the drag and drop pop-down menu and set up my correct answers. And I can see in my correct answers window that I've chosen combination, which means there's no sequence to what they choose, just that they choose the correct target and source combinations. And at the moment, my amphibian box belongs to the frog, the insect belongs to the dragonfly or insect, and the spider box belongs to the spider. So I'm happy with all of that. I can then say OK, and now test my final interaction.